She ended our marriage over speakerphone while I was testifying to save lives. The timing was so precise it almost felt rehearsed. I had just finished briefing the European Commission's Subcommittee on Transnational Crisis Infrastructure. We were discussing data from Hurricane Elijah and how poorly coordinated systems cost entire communities in the Gulf. I was there representing FEMA, invited as the U.S. Director of Emergency Management Strategy, a title I'd earned after 23 years in the field. My name is Lucas Grant. I'm 51 years old. I've buried coworkers under rubble, pulled bodies from floods, and kept national systems from collapsing under pressure. But none of that prepared me for the call I got in the hallway outside that hearing room in Brussels. It came in while I was scrolling through briefing notes. I didn't recognize the number at first, international prefix, likely masked. But when I answered, I knew the voice immediately. Bright, chipper, too bright, too chipper. "Hi, babe," she said. "Got a minute?" It was the voice she used when she wanted to control the outcome, cheerful to disarm, detached to dominate. I stepped away from the window, found a quiet spot beside a vending machine, and said, "What's up?" "I'm divorcing you," she said. "I've already sold the Lake Tahoe cabin. I'm moving in with Cal, my yoga instructor. Remember him? I just wanted you to hear it from me first." She laughed then, sharp, light, like something you'd hear after a punchline at a garden party. That sound stuck in my ear longer than her actual words. I kept my voice steady. "I understand." There was a pause. She didn't expect that. She was expecting fury, disbelief, the kind of emotional blowback you get from blindsiding someone thousands of miles from home. But I've spent 2 decades coordinating chaos. I don't raise my voice. I restructure the battlefield. She started to say something else, probably a line she rehearsed. I hung up before she could deliver it. For a moment, I just stood there. A half-empty Fanta bottle hummed in the machine behind me. I stared at the floor and let the details crystallize. Lake Tahoe, the cabin, sold, calculations, moving in. My wife, Chelsea, had never been impulsive, which meant this was planned, meticulously, which also meant she'd underestimated me, badly. The Lake Tahoe property wasn't just a vacation home. She called it our healing retreat, said she wanted a place with clean air and quiet spaces, somewhere we could reset. That was 2 years ago. I bought it in cash, renovated it to her specifications. Glass railing, meditation deck, an infrared sauna. She spent weekends there on her own, under the guise of mindfulness retreats. I paid the instructors. I signed off the expense reports. One of those instructors must have been Cal. Chelsea met him during what she called a wellness sabbatical last spring. I'd just returned from a flash flood response in Missouri, and she was headed out to Oregon for a month to reconnect with stillness. I footed the bill, including the private chef and the herbalist she insisted on. Cal was listed on the itemized invoice as movement coach. I remember because I laughed at it. Now I don't. Back in the hearing room, I sat through 2 more hours of debate without blinking, spoke when I needed to, took notes on key recommendations, even joked with the Danish liaison during break. None of it showed on my face. That's a skill you learn when you've handled Category 5, storms, and congressional hearings in the same week. You learn to keep your own crisis off the radar. That night, I didn't sleep. I ran the math in my head, checked timestamps, pulled up property records on a private device. She moved fast, but not fast enough. There were gaps, loopholes, and most importantly, leverage. My flight home was quiet. I took the aisle seat and didn't speak to anyone, didn't even drink. I watched the map as the plane inched its way over the Atlantic, back toward Washington. My mind wasn't on the marriage anymore. Not really. It was on what came next, on control, on precision. Chelsea had made a critical error. She forgot what I do for a living. She expected a fight. I gave her silence and let her hang herself. The front door still opened with my key. I half expected the locks to be changed, but no, that would have been too obvious. Chelsea preferred stealth moves, cuts made so clean you didn't feel them until the bleeding started. The house was quiet. That wasn't unusual, but the silence felt off, not peaceful, emptied. The kind of quiet you only get after something's been removed. My suitcase hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud. I stood there for a moment, scanning the entryway like it was a crime scene, because in a way, it was. The foyer rug was missing. Small thing. But it had been there since we moved in. A thick, ugly thing she insisted on from a trip to Morocco. Gone. So were the tall ceramic vases by the stairwell, the console table, the mirror with the gold leaf trim. She didn't take everything, just what she considered hers. Upstairs, the bedroom was half intact. My suit still hung in the closet, but the dresser was stripped, no perfume bottles, no jewelry box, not even a hairbrush left behind. Her side of the bed was made, mine wasn't. Message received. In the kitchen, a few pieces of mail were stacked near the sink, some unopened, some half-shoved behind a candle holder. None of it was addressed to her. The security panel blinked red. I checked it. All 4 exterior cameras had been disconnected manually. That told me more than her phone call did. I found her in the sunroom, legs curled up on the chaise lounge like she was posing for a lifestyle blog. She wore a long cardigan over yoga tights and had a green smoothie in one hand. Her laptop was open, music playing softly. That fake-ass jazz people play when they want to seem serene. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile you give a guest, not a husband. "Well," she said, stretching the word out like gum. "Welcome home." I didn't respond right away, just walked in and stood by the doorframe. "You look tired," she added. "That flight must have been brutal." I gave her a slow nod. 15 hours in transit, layover in JFK. She took a sip. "You should rest. You've always had trouble adjusting from Europe." I watched her closely. Her tone was cheerful, but her eyes were scanning me, gauging for threat, looking for cracks. "I stopped at the bedroom," I said. "Half of it's gone." Her smile tightened just slightly. "Yeah, I started moving things over to my new place. Thought it'd make things cleaner for both of us." Clean. That was her word. Her favorite excuse when she wanted to cover something ugly with a white lie. "You moved out before telling me?" I asked. She shrugged. "You were out of the country. Timing wasn't ideal, but life doesn't wait for permission, does it?" I let that one hang in the air. Let her think she was ahead. She stood and walked past me, trailing that artificial citrus scent she always wore. "I left you most of what you use anyway." I didn't want to be difficult about it. "How generous," I said, my voice dry. She stopped in the hallway, turned to face me with her hip cocked. "I thought you might be more upset." "You wanted a divorce. You got it. No point yelling about it." Her smile came back, wider this time. She mistook composure for defeat. Good. She moved toward the stairs. "I've got a showing at my new place this afternoon. Cal's helping me set up the garden terrace. It's a live workspace, super open concept. You'd hate it." She laughed again, light and effortless. She thought she'd won. I followed her gaze as she looked around the house one last time, like she was saying goodbye to something beneath her. "You can keep this place," she said. "It's not really my vibe anymore." "How thoughtful," I replied. She walked to the front door, grabbed a tote bag from the bench. "Oh, by the way, mail's piling up. You should sort that. There's some legal stuff in there." She opened the door and paused. "No hard feelings, okay?" I held her eyes. "None at all." The door clicked shut behind her. I stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet again. This time, it was different. This time, the silence was mine. She thought I'd just let it all slide, that I'd come back from Brussels with a broken heart and an overnight bag and spend the next few months licking wounds and dividing assets. She didn't realize that silence, for someone like me, wasn't weakness. It was strategy. I walked to the garage. The air was cooler there, sterile, the kind of space that kept secrets well. I moved aside a stack of paint cans and lifted a false floorboard near the back wall. Beneath it, a biometric lock waited for my thumbprint. She forgot I built this. The safe clicked open, quiet and clean. Inside were 2 things: a hard drive containing encrypted financial data from both our accounts, and a signed power of attorney she gave me 3 years ago, notarized and never revoked. I smiled for the first time since the call. Chelsea thought she'd played the perfect hand, but she forgot something crucial. She married a man who plans for disasters and survives them. You don't lie to someone who teaches governments how to detect deception. Chelsea thought she could move money in the shadows and I'd never notice. Thought she could shift accounts, sell property, and reroute assets with the quiet confidence of someone who'd never been caught. That's the difference between someone who's clever and someone who's trained. She didn't understand that what I do, What I've done for over 2 decades is identify patterns, track breakdowns in communication, and recognize when a story doesn't add up. I don't just respond to disasters, I dissect them. The morning after she left, I started laying down my own groundwork. No shouting, no threats, just structure. Quiet, efficient structure. First move, I pulled copies of our financial records going back 2 years. Not the surface-level stuff she assumed I'd check. Bank statements, tax returns, shared credit lines. I went deeper. Backup servers, cloud-synced transaction logs, and the raw metadata from our financial aggregator accounts. Chelsea never knew I mirrored everything through a secondary platform. She thought digital footprints could be wiped with a browser setting. Second move, I activated a dormant contract I'd arranged with a FEMA-adjacent cybersecurity team, a group that normally secures infrastructure from ransomware attacks. I redirected them. Their new target? A person I once loved. They didn't need names, just instructions and access. Within 48 hours, I had a full map of every wire transfer made from our joint accounts over the last 90 days. She'd routed over $270,000 through 4 staggered transfers. 2 from the shared checking, 1 from the HELOC, 1 from an account I didn't even realize we still had, a forgotten travel rewards savings fund from our honeymoon planning days. It was empty now. All 4 transfers landed in a trust titled Under a New LLC, Solara Meridian Holdings, Delaware registered, manager listed as one Chelsea W. Grant. The signature on the filing, mine. Except it wasn't. I ran it through a verification tool used by the Department of Homeland Security, one I'd helped prototype. It confirmed what I already knew. Forged, sloppy too. The stroke angles were inconsistent, the curve on the G was wrong, and the tail of the T ended too short. Third move, Zurich. I'd worked on a multinational climate risk panel years ago and maintained ties with a discreet financial intelligence firm over there, people who specialize in tracing invisible money. I called in a favor, gave them the LLC name and a list of shell transactions I'd extracted. Within hours, they confirmed the trust was linked to a private account at a bank known for shielding its high-net-worth clients. Chelsea had been converting the funds to crypto, then parking them offshore to avoid visibility. I didn't get angry, I got legal. A contact in D.C., a former FEMA procurement officer turned attorney, helped me draw up a packet, emergency injunction, motion to freeze joint assets pending review, motion to contest fraudulent transfer, the works. I knew the judge. More importantly, I knew the timeline. By the time Chelsea woke up the Thursday morning, everything she thought she owned was locked in escrow. She called once. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sat back and reviewed the timeline like I was conducting a post-disaster analysis. March 18th, she books the wellness retreat in Oregon. April 5th, the first transfer. April 19th, she adds Cal to her emergency contact list. May 2nd, she schedules the Tahoe appraisal. May 8th, she calls me in Brussels. She'd been laying the groundwork for 2 months, every piece choreographed, every step calculated. But what she never counted on was surveillance, the kind that doesn't come with wiretaps or cameras, the kind that lives in documents, metadata, behavior, and me. She didn't know that. When I get quiet, I'm not sulking. I'm recording, archiving, building the case. The best part? I hadn't even shown my full hand. There were emails, screenshots, text threads with Cal that she'd carelessly backed up to our cloud. She deleted them from her phone, but didn't know I had access to the admin dashboard. She'd written things like, "He doesn't ask questions," and "Lucas is too distracted with global crap to notice." I copied them, time-stamped, geo-tagged. Then I made the call, not to her attorney. A man named Stuart Lang, old money, new arrogance. He picked up mid-sentence, already condescending. "Mr. Grant, I'd appreciate if you'd direct future communications through counsel." I cut him off. "Stuart, tell Chelsea to check her account again." Silence, then, "Excuse me?" "She'll know what it means." I hung up. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a fight. All I needed was for her to open her banking app, expecting 6 figures and finding a red banner that read, "Funds frozen, under review." Because you don't forge the name of a man who trains governments to sniff out fraud. You especially don't forge his signature. She wanted freedom. I gave her exposure. Cal, the yoga instructor, walked like he owned stillness, the kind of man who weaponizes calm, unbothered posture, soothing voice, barely concealed condescension. I'd only met him twice, once at a charity brunch where Chelsea introduced him as her movement therapist, and once outside the Tahoe cabin, where I arrived unannounced and caught him shirtless, barefoot, and way too comfortable near my espresso machine. He had the smile of a man who thought he couldn't be touched. That didn't age well. I started with the basics: name, license number, public records. Not much came up. Cal used a shortened version of his name professionally, Cal Morgan. But legally, he was Callahan Moritz, born in Sacramento, 2 previous addresses in Marin County, and one incident in 2016 that had been legally buried. It took some digging, but eventually I found it. He'd been part of a sexual misconduct investigation involving a female client at a private wellness resort outside San Diego. The case was settled privately. That phrase usually means guilty, but not enough for jail, just enough for hush money and an airtight NDA. He was also listed in a lawsuit for insurance fraud, exaggerated injuries after a minor fender bender in 2017. The case was flagged but never prosecuted. I packaged everything: documents, scanned filings, local news clippings, screenshots of archive bios that had since been scrubbed from his studio website. Then, I added one more item: a photo of Cal and Chelsea at a healing retreat 6 months before our marriage collapsed, her hand on his leg, his face tilted toward hers, both unaware the photo had been taken by a guest and publicly posted to the retreat's blog. The image time-stamped their relationship, 4 months before she asked for space and 3 weeks after I buried my mother. I didn't send the package to Chelsea. That would have been a waste. I sent it to Arcana Wellness Studios' board of directors, 5 people, all investors, all deeply image conscious. Arcana was already under pressure for its rapid expansion into high-end neighborhoods. Last thing they needed was scandal, wrapped in tight pants and spiritual jargon. I knew someone on the board, a man named Elliot. We'd crossed paths years ago on a resilience task force post-Katrina. I sent him the file, no commentary, just a subject line: due diligence, Cal Moritz. He replied 12 minutes later, "Jesus, we'll handle it." That same afternoon, Arcana's social media wiped Cal's presence entirely. No posts, no quotes, no calendar listings. The next morning, the studio issued a vague PR statement about reevaluating staff commitments in alignment with our integrity values. PR speak for, he's gone, and we're not paying severance. Chelsea didn't know yet. I waited. While the board was cleaning house, I turned to the final loose thread: how long this had really been going on. Chelsea had always been meticulous about her image. She never would have admitted it. But I knew someone who might. There's a lawyer named Dana. She's been part of our social circle for years. Chelsea leaned on her for casual legal advice, contracts, non-disclosures, real estate fine print. Dana once helped Chelsea write up a silent partner agreement when she flirted with investing in a boutique crystal shop. I texted Dana and asked her to meet for coffee. She said yes, probably out of guilt. She looked nervous when she arrived. She wore sunglasses indoors, like I was going to subpoena her or something. "I don't want to be involved," she said before I even sat down. "You already are," I said. "I just need dates." She hesitated, but Dana had never been good at resisting pressure, especially not when the facts were already lined up, and all I needed was confirmation. She exhaled. "Chelsea started drafting the LLC paperwork 6 months ago. She said it was for a backup plan. Cal was already living at the cabin when you were out of state in February." February. That was 1 week after my mother's funeral. I nodded, didn't flinch, just added it to the timeline. Chelsea had held my hand graveside while planning how to empty my accounts and shack up with a man who barely had a resume. That night, I poured a scotch. No music, no lights. Just sat by the window with my laptop open, arranging the dates like dominoes. Every lie, every transfer, every soft voice manipulation, laid out in columns. Chelsea's freedom had come at a cost. She just didn't realize I was the one writing the invoice. 2 days later, she called. I let it ring. Then came the second call, a text, another call. I finally picked up just long enough to hear her say, "Did you do something to Cal?" I didn't answer. She kept talking. They let him go. His reputation's ruined. He said someone dug into... I hung up. Let her spiral. Let her realize what leverage really feels like when it's no longer in her hands. Chelsea wanted a clean break. Instead, she lost her lover, her backup plan, and any illusion of control she thought she had left. She thought she ended the story, but she forgot who writes the after-action reports. The hearing wasn't dramatic, not in the Hollywood sense. No raised voices, no banging gavels, no storming out. Just a sterile courtroom in downtown D.C., the kind of space where truth gets weighed in paperwork and tone, not tears. Chelsea walked in wearing a pale blue pantsuit, tailored within an inch of its life, like she was stepping into a PR shoot, not a legal proceeding. Her chin was high, her smile faint, controlled, calculated. She had no idea what was coming. I'd spent the last 8 weeks assembling the case the way I would a federal incident report, chronologically, surgically, with no room for narrative distortion. My attorney, Maria, had worked FEMA compliance cases for years. She knew how to present evidence without theater, just facts with teeth. Chelsea sat down across from me, flanked by her attorney, Stuart, the same smug voice who had scoffed at me over the phone when I froze her accounts. He was tapping through a tablet, still thinking this would be a straightforward property dispute with some marital miscommunication language thrown in. The judge, an older man with zero tolerance for fluff, opened by reviewing the basic facts. Married 19 years, no children, joint ownership of primary residence, secondary property in Lake Tahoe, and a recently dissolved LLC Chelsea had registered. Then Maria stood. She walked the court through the digital paper trail. 4 unauthorized transfers from joint accounts, each routed through a deliberately obscured LLC. She presented the forged signature, confirmed as such by forensic handwriting analysis and verified through 2 independent sources. Then came the emails, dozens of them, pulled from a cloud backup Chelsea had never revoked access to. Cal was in half of them. So were the dates, the ones that mattered: February, March, April. All while Chelsea had been assuring me nothing was wrong. All while I was managing hurricane after hurricane, disaster after disaster. Maria introduced the motion to nullify Chelsea's financial claims based on willful fraud and misrepresentation. The judge listened, nodded occasionally, took notes with the kind of slow, deliberate strokes that meant he was actually paying attention. Chelsea's side scrambled to pivot. Stuart tried to soften the timeline, painting Chelsea as emotionally strained, overwhelmed, seeking clarity. He tried to recast the asset transfers as precautionary, not malicious. But then Maria played the final card, a printed message sent from Chelsea to a mutual friend 6 weeks before our separation. It read, "Lucas is too focused on saving the world to notice what I'm building." The room went still. When it was my turn to testify, I didn't dramatize anything. I didn't even look at Chelsea. I just answered the judge's questions, explained the timeline, clarified the documentation, and calmly outlined the chain of events, starting with the call in Brussels and ending with the exposure of Cal's past. At one point, the judge paused and asked me, "Mr. Grant, why didn't you contest the divorce itself?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Because I'm not here to win her back. I'm here to make sure she doesn't profit from betrayal." He didn't ask me anything else after that. When the ruling came down, it wasn't a surprise to me, but it hit Chelsea like a slap across the face. She lost her claim to the Lake Tahoe property. The LLC she tried to hide assets in was ordered dissolved, and the funds, what remained of them, were to be returned to the joint account and split equitably after restitution was made. She was required to repay $187,000 in misappropriated funds and was barred from touching any portion of my retirement accounts, including the federal pension she once said would be our cushion. Her expression didn't crack until the judge finalized the order. I watched her jaw tighten, then her eyes flicker, not with rage, but with something worse: realization. She'd thought she would walk in, charm her way through a settlement, and exit with half, maybe more. She thought she'd be rewarded for running her own narrative. Instead, she walked out with nothing but a folder of consequences. After the gavel dropped and the room cleared, she approached me near the hallway outside the chambers. Her heels clicked like a countdown. I didn't move. She stopped in front of me, that faint smile gone. Her tone was low, almost intimate. "You didn't have to do this. I looked her straight in the eye. You did. She blinked like she was about to say more, but there was nothing left to say. She turned and walked away. Slower this time, heavier. She'd rewritten the story without asking if I was done writing. Now she knew. She burned the house. I built a fortress. It's been 9 months since the court ruling. 9 months since Chelsea walked out of that courtroom, carrying nothing but a designer handbag and a bruised ego. I haven't spoken to her since. Not because I'm avoiding her, but because silence says more than any closing remark ever could. I live in a new place now, a converted loft just outside Arlington. Clean lines, exposed steel beams, and blackout glass. It used to be a manufacturing space before the city gutted it and rezoned the block. Now it's mine. Industrial, minimalist, functional. Everything in it has a purpose. No clutter, no softness, no traces of shared history. I designed it like a command post because that's what it needed to be. A place where clarity reigns, where nothing sneaks up on you. The bedroom overlooks the skyline. The walls are soundproofed. My desk is built into the corner of the space like a forward operating station. It's not a home in the traditional sense, but then again, I'm not living a traditional life anymore. People still ask if I miss her. If I miss the marriage, I don't. I miss who I thought she was. That's a different kind of grief, mourning the version of someone you built your life around, only to find out it was scaffolding over rot. I've had time to reflect, time to assess. I spent 23 years managing emergencies across borders, earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, floods, political collapses. And somehow, nothing taught me more about recovery than what she did to me. Because disasters don't always hit from the outside. Sometimes they wear perfume, whisper affirmations, and call themselves your partner. I know better now. These days, I work in a different capacity. I consult. Quietly. No press briefings, no Senate hearings. I mentor younger emergency response teams, guys and women barely out of grad school, still green but sharp. I teach them what I wish someone had taught me earlier. How to prepare for the kind of damage no radar picks up, the kind that sneaks in when you're too focused on the mission to notice the breach happening in your own house. Every Thursday I host a private training series, invite only, no recordings. We don't talk about politics. We talk about protocols, about patterns, about what to watch for, both in the field and in your own life. A lot of these kids come from chaos themselves. You can see it in how they take notes, like they're trying to save their own skin before anyone else's. I kept the Tahoe cabin, legally, financially, everything. It's fully mine now, but I don't use it for weekend getaways or Instagram retreats. I turned it into something that matters. OPR, Operational Pause and Recovery, a rest program I founded, off books, for responders who are burned out, broken down, or quietly unraveling under the weight of what they've seen. I don't advertise it, no official referrals, just word of mouth and encrypted inboxes. They come up one at a time, no phones, no press, just space to sleep, walk, breathe, and maybe talk. The cabin sits up near the ridge, wrapped in pine, overlooking the lake. I rebuilt parts of it, stripped out Chelsea's taste, added functional flooring, reinforced the windows, replaced all the furniture with durable, sustainable material. It's austere, but calm. They say the snow hits harder in Tahoe now, thicker and more frequent. I believe it. The last time I was up there, it started falling at dusk. I sat on the back porch, blanket over my lap, bourbon in my hand. The kind of quiet that sinks into your bones. I watched the flakes settle on the deck, melting slightly, then freezing over again. It reminded me of how healing works, not all at once, not clean, just layer by layer until the pain stops cutting as deep. Chelsea used to say she left because she needed peace, that she couldn't breathe under the weight of my world. What she meant was that she couldn't live in a space that didn't center her. She thought her freedom was waiting in another man's arms and an open concept studio in some wellness district. She was wrong. Peace isn't found in a new zip code. It's built, inch by inch, decision by decision, scar by scar. I built mine in a steel and glass loft where everything has a place. I built it in a lakeside cabin now, used to repair people the world forgets. I built it in the silence that followed her departure, and the clarity that rose in its place. She left me for peace. I built it without her.